A tenant in Los Angeles, California claims that they are unable to pay rent even though they won a $27,000 car on a game show. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of California. Obviously, California is one of the very last places in the entire country to have eliminated the eviction moratoriums and the eviction protections due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's an unfortunate situation this landlord is facing where they have a tenant who hasn't paid rent in like 3 years, right? Now, they did pay, I believe they got some sort of rental assistance for a small portion of that amount, but that still leaves a huge, huge amount of money that is owed to this landlord. And it seems totally unfair that this landlord is just stuck with this non-paying tenant for 3+ years, okay? Especially when you consider the fact that the tenant actually isn't in financial distress and was on a game show and won a $27,000 car. And, I agree with the landlord. The landlord's logic is, hey, sell the car and then pay me some of the money that you owe me. But no, this tenant did not do that, obviously, because the tenant is a scammer. I mean, that's the only thing that you can say when you hear about a situation like this. And you know what? There are so many scammers who benefited from all of the eviction protections. And meanwhile, small mom and pop landlords in particular took it hard, okay? All landlords took it hard, but for the small mom and pop landlords, we took it especially hard because we don't have the huge emergency reserves and a huge number of extra units to help balance out our totals, right? So a lot of them are just in horrible financial distress, if not going bankrupt or forced to sell these properties. And, that's not what we want to see. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. If you had a tenant who owed you thousands of dollars and then they won some, huge prize like a car and then they didn't pay you, I mean, how would you feel? Do you feel that is them just proving themselves as a scammer, or maybe you're on the tenant side? Maybe they don't have to pay you, with their money. That maybe you think that they deserve to, sit there and scam their way through. I've read all sorts of comments lately from these crazy people who, landlords, they're just getting what they deserve. Well, you know what? I don't care if you think that landlords deserve it or not. I don't think they deserve it. I think that landlords deserve to make money off of their properties. I believe that, especially when it comes to mom and pop landlords who own one or two properties, they're not rich. They aren't able to take these huge financial losses, and they do not need to be subsidizing your housing. One of the comments I had lately, it was from a person who is homeless who lives in California, and they did not like the way that I talk about homeless people. They were like, oh, well, my situation is different. And I'm like, listen, I am not discounting the fact that, hey, sometimes there are people who fall into hardship due to whatever issues they have, be it medical or whatever. But what I am saying is that is not the landlord's fault. That is not the landlord's responsibility. And we are not a homeless shelter. We are not a social service provider. And if you want that, you need to go and talk to your politicians about getting those programs implemented, and do not put that on a private business owner. That's what my position is now and what it will forever be. So anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from NBCLosAngeles.com, and it says, Tenants, price is right when raises tensions in nearly 3-year rent dispute. Now that COVID rental protections have ended, tensions between some landlords and tenants are at an all-time high. Some small landlords feel the protections have swung too far in the tenant's favor, making it nearly impossible to evict them. One family wonders how they'll ever get their rental home back. And of course, this article has a video that goes along with it, and I'll play that for you right now.
Last December, Lisa Marie Maestas was a contestant on The Price is Right.
$26,954 for a Chevy Camaro.
She won a new car. Wow. She may owe taxes on that new car, but it was still a lucky win for the music teacher who lost work when the pandemic hit. In the 3 years since then, Lisa Marie's landlords say she and her partner have paid just 1 month of rent, plus nearly $11,000 per a judge's order for their Arcadia rental home. The landlords say the total rent owed for that time period is $89,000. Meanwhile,
this is the water right here. See? And it goes in a bucket right here.
the couple's landlords say they've been living in this converted shuttle bus since January. We met them in Covina.
Do you hear the rain? Well, we have a leak.
They say they can't afford a hotel. Maria Nicoletti and Rodrigo Vidales say they and their 2 children drove from their Virginia home to L.A. to try to evict their tenants, who they believe took advantage of COVID protections.
When you publicly won a $27,000 car, you're sending me on the same breath a declaration that you can't pay me? How is that making any sense?
All right, you saw the video. Let's get into the article. Maria Nicoletti and Rodrigo Vidales say they're living in a converted shuttle bus with their 2 children. They drove the bus from their Virginia home to Los Angeles back in January to try and evict the tenants living in their Arcadia rental property. The couple says they can't afford to stay in a hotel because their tenants haven't been paying rent throughout the pandemic, which is income they rely on. The couple believes their tenants have been taking advantage of COVID rental protections. In the 3 years since the pandemic started, Nicoletti and Vidales say their tenants have paid just 1 month of rent, plus nearly $11,000 per a judge's order for their rental home. Nicoletti and Vidales say the total rent owed for that time was $89,000. So yeah, these people, they don't live in California. You know, I'm assuming, and you know what, it doesn't say here specifically, but I'm assuming that this is a property that they used to live in, that when they decided to move to Virginia, they said, oh, we're going to keep it and then rent it out. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and suddenly they had tenants in their property who say, hey, we're not paying rent anymore. So they shot back down to California recently, and guess what? You know, they have to stay in an RV because they can't afford anything else. You know, this is a bad situation. This is where I say, you know, these accidental landlords or small landlords or, you know, the mom and pops who just own 1 or 2 properties, they can really, really be taken advantage of. And unfortunately for these people, they fell into that situation. You know, that's why I say, if you own a property in California and you're, you know, moving to a different house and you're like, oh, maybe I'll turn it into a rental, you might want to seriously reconsider that. It is not as simple as simply just throwing it up on the market and, you know, putting a tenant up in there. If you get a bad tenant in there, they have so many protections. It might take so long for you to get that tenant out of there, and you might have to pay them a significant sum of money. I'm not talking about, you know, a couple $100 here. I'm talking about thousands. You might have to pay them thousands of dollars per the state law just to get them out of there. This is how ridiculous it is. So sell it, you know, sell that property. Maybe you should have bought a property closer to where you live now instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to hold on to this thing. Yeah, the appreciation was great, but now look at how much money you're in the hole because of this crappy tenant. The couple say they became more frustrated this past December when one of the tenants, Lisa Marie Maestas, appeared on The Price is Right and won a new Chevy Camaro. The landlords say they're frustrated that the tenants weren't paying rent, even though the tenants repeatedly mentioned in emails that they were working. When you publicly won a $27,000 car and you're sending me in the same breath a declaration that you can't pay me, how is that making any sense, said Nicoletti. And it doesn't make sense, okay? I've mentioned this many times before, but financial problems never seem to end for some people, okay? No matter what the situation of the economy is, there's always going to be people who will not be able to afford the rent, won't be able to pay their bills, always are having trouble, and they always are looking for some sort of a handout from somebody, okay? And now the government has put into law these eviction protections that make it darn near impossible to get rid of these people. So you're stuck with this $89,000 in the hole, and this person is allowed to live in your property for free. Now, what kind of joke is that? It is idiotic and it makes absolutely no sense. And they're doing it, oh, well, these people are still suffering from the pandemic. Well, did you do a means test? Did you actually check, make sure that these people don't have any income and are unable to afford the rent? No, of course you didn't do that means test. You just gave them the protections regardless, right? And even if you do a means test, how long are we going to allow these people to take advantage of these landlords? Okay, there is a limit to what anybody can say is justified, okay? And simply put, 3 years is way, way, way beyond that limit. 1 year is beyond that limit. Heck, I mean, a few months is beyond that limit for me, okay? And as a private individual, I remember back in 2020 when all of this stuff was jumping off, right? And I made videos about it at the time saying that, hey, if a tenant is having problems, one of my tenants is having trouble making the rent at that point because they lost their job, then I might be able to say, okay, I'm going to delay what you owe me by a month or two, not by 3 years. I don't have enough money to cover if all my tenants stop paying for 3 years. I don't. I would have lost the properties. So yeah, the people in California, they are living in fantasy world thinking, oh, they're protecting tenants. The only thing they're doing is protecting a bunch of freeloaders. Tensions only escalated throughout the pandemic, with both sides accusing each other of neglecting the property. The I team met Maestas at the rental home a few months ago. She agreed to an interview the following week. She shared dozens of emails with us documenting her side of the story. Maestas later changed her mind, declined an interview, and told us not to contact her again. But in those emails, Maestas and her partner accused the landlords of repeated harassment. They complained about the plumbing, mold, and termites, and the backyard pool was a big issue for them. The landlord stopped paying to service it 3 years ago when the tenants stopped paying rent. The tenants later demanded a $4,000 reimbursement after they paid for pool service themselves. So let me get this straight, okay? These people who were not paying a penny, not paying any rent for 3 years, right, demanded that the landlord be able to repair something. And listen, you have to think of it from the landlord's perspective. Where do they get the money to make the repairs? They get it from the rental income, okay? You have bankrupted us, put us in a horrible financial place, and then you're going to complain that we can't afford to fix anything? That's your fault. Maybe you should fix it. And so they say, oh, well, we paid $4,000 to fix the pool, so you should pay us back. No, we can't afford to service the pool because you're not paying rent. You still owe us $89,000. So maybe we can subtract that $4,000 from the 89. You only owe us 85 now. Maybe I'd be willing to do that, but you know what? These people, they just need to go. They need to go. Get the heck out of these landlords' property, okay? These landlords deserve to get their property back, and you need to go live in your car or something because you're nothing but, scammers. You're squatters in this house, and you're being, held up by the government regulations in a crazy place like California.